Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's video dives into some of the most surprising and unexpected potential roster cuts the Dallas Cowboys could be facing as the offseason progresses. With training camp approaching and the roster bubble tightening, there are a few players who many might not have expected to see on the chopping block, including notable names like running back Miles Sanders, edge rusher Sam Williams, wide receiver Jalen Tolbert, and 5 other players who could be heading toward the exit. Stick around because this news might shake up your perspective on the Cowboys roster strategy. And as always, we're breaking it all down for you with the latest insights and some context that could explain why these cuts make sense or don't. Let's start by setting the stage. The Dallas Cowboys have been through quite a roller coaster of a season last year, and have brought in new faces and invested big money in key positions, creating an incredibly competitive roster. The 53-man roster limit means that tough decisions are inevitable, and sometimes beloved players or those with potential can unexpectedly find themselves on the bubble. What makes this list so intriguing is that some of these players were either seen as potential starters or significant contributors, making the possibility of their release a real shock to fans and analysts alike. First up, Miles Sanders. Now, this one really caught a lot of people off guard. Sanders was signed by the Cowboys in free agency, and many expected him to compete for meaningful touches in the backfield alongside Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott. Sanders has proven himself as a solid, versatile running back in the NFL, capable of handling both rushing and receiving duties. So why would the Cowboys even consider cutting him? Well, it comes down to roster composition and salary cap implications. The Cowboys have been juggling their cap space heavily to accommodate star players and necessary reinforcements at skill positions, and Sanders' contract, while not exorbitant, still commands a decent chunk of cap space. Additionally, Pollard's continued emergence as a dynamic playmaker, along with the team's investment in younger backs, has created a crowded backfield. If the Cowboys feel confident in their depth or want to open room for other key signings or draft picks, Sanders might find himself unexpectedly released or at least waived for another team to claim. This would be a bold and surprising move, but it's not out of the realm of possibility given the Cowboys' history of making tough calls in pursuit of roster balance. Moving on to Sam Williams, the young edge rusher who's been touted as a rising star in the Cowboys' defense. Williams was a promising second-round pick, showing flashes of brilliance during his rookie season, especially with his pass rushing ability. But the harsh reality in the NFL is that potential alone doesn't guarantee roster security. The Cowboys have recently bolstered their pass rush with veteran signings and have high expectations for newer draft picks and free agents who bring diverse skills. If Williams struggles with consistency, health, or fitting into the defensive scheme, the Cowboys might decide to cut ties sooner than expected. Additionally, his contract status as a rookie makes it a lower financial risk to move on if they believe they have better options or want to clear roster spots for veterans who can contribute immediately. While many fans are rooting for Williams to develop into a star, this cut candidate status highlights just how competitive the roster spots are, especially on defense. Jalen Tolbert is another name on this surprising cut list. Tolbert has shown flashes of solid potential at wide receiver and contributed well on special teams. His size, speed, and catching ability have made him a key piece of the Cowboys' receiving core depth chart. However, the Cowboys have also been very active in acquiring new receivers through the draft and free agency, creating a numbers game that is tough for players on the fringe. Tolbert's future with the team could depend heavily on his off-season performance, ability to develop chemistry with the quarterbacks, and his role in special teams. The presence of newly drafted wideouts who are seen as immediate contributors or players with higher upside could threaten Tolbert's roster spot. It's important to remember that cutting a player like Tolbert doesn't necessarily mean he isn't talented. It might simply be a reflection of the team's overall strategy to shake up the receiving room and find the perfect mix of veterans and young players. Now, let's talk about the 5 other players who might be surprisingly cut as the Cowboys trim their roster. These players, while not as high profile as Sanders, Williams, or Tolbert, represent important pieces of the puzzle and have varying reasons for being on the bubble. Each one has their own story, whether it's an injury that hampered development, inconsistent play, or simply being caught in a numbers crunch at their position. One of those players is a veteran linebacker who was brought in for depth and leadership but has faced stiff competition from younger, faster, and cheaper players emerging from the draft. The Cowboys value youth and athleticism highly, especially when it comes to linebackers who need to cover a lot of ground in today's pass-heavy NFL. While this veteran has been a reliable locker room presence, the front office might feel the time is right to start fresh with younger talent who can grow into bigger roles. Another candidate is a backup offensive lineman who had an up-and-down rookie season. The Cowboys have invested heavily in their offensive line, but the margin for error is slim. Players who can't consistently perform or who struggle with injuries often find themselves in precarious positions when the roster gets cut from 90 to 53. This player's situation is a reminder that even those who make the initial roster in training camp must prove their value continuously, especially on a team with championship aspirations. A third player under consideration is a special teams ace whose primary role is coverage and tackling on kickoffs and punts. Special teams are often overlooked but crucial to winning games. However, special teams specialists can be expendable if the team finds younger players who can contribute on offense or defense and also handle special teams duties. This creates a difficult choice for coaches balancing the roster between specialists and positional depth. The fourth cut candidate is a young cornerback who was drafted in the later rounds and showed promise but hasn't yet developed enough to carve out a consistent role. The Cowboys secondary has seen a lot of turnover recently, and the coaching staff is always looking for players who can immediately contribute in coverage and run support. If this cornerback can't show significant improvement in the offseason, his roster spot could be at risk, especially with new draft picks and free agents competing for the same position. Finally, the fifth surprise cut candidate is a quarterback. Yes, you heard that right, a quarterback could be on the chopping block, which is a rare but not unheard of move. The Cowboys carry 3 quarterbacks in most seasons, but with the acquisition of new talent and the presence of established starters, a third quarterback may not make the final cut. This could be a developmental player or a veteran who was brought in to push competition but hasn't demonstrated the potential to stick on the roster long term. These surprising cut candidates underscore how volatile and competitive NFL rosters are, especially on a team like the Dallas Cowboys, which is trying to balance immediate success with long-term development. It's also a testament to the business side of football, where tough decisions must be made even when they involve fan favorites or players with potential. Now, let's consider some of the reasons behind these potential cuts. Salary cap management is a huge factor for the Cowboys this offseason. They've made some high-profile signings and have star players requiring lucrative contracts, so every roster move must be scrutinized not only for talent but also for financial impact. Cutting a veteran with a big contract or a player who isn't producing up to expectations can free up cap space to either re-sign key players or pursue other free agents. It's a delicate balancing act that requires both foresight and tough calls. Performance and consistency are another major reason. The Cowboys coaching staff and front office have made it clear that the team won't hesitate to move on from players who don't meet expectations or show the right work ethic. In a league as competitive as the NFL, even a single missed assignment or lack of development can be costly for a player's future with the team. This is especially true for players on the fringes of the roster, where the margin between making the team and getting cut is razor thin. The influx of young talent from the draft also puts pressure on veterans and borderline players. The Cowboys have been aggressive in drafting players who can contribute immediately and develop into long-term starters. When a highly touted rookie or young free agent impresses in off-season workouts or training camp, it can push older or less consistent players out of their spots. This infusion of youth is necessary for sustained success but makes the competition for roster spots fiercer than ever. Scheme fit and versatility also play crucial roles. Players who can adapt to multiple roles, contribute on special teams, or fill in at different positions have a better chance of sticking around. If a player lacks versatility or doesn't fit well into the team's system, the Cowboys may decide to part ways and look for someone more adaptable. This is an area where players like Sanders and Tolbert must prove they bring more than just their primary skills to the table. Lastly, injuries and health concerns always impact roster decisions. Some players on this surprise cut list have battled injuries that limited their availability or effectiveness. NFL teams are often forced to make hard decisions with injured players, especially if the recovery timeline is uncertain or the injury history raises red flags. The Cowboys need to maintain a healthy and dependable roster, which sometimes means cutting players who haven't been able to stay on the field. It's worth noting that these potential cuts don't necessarily mean the end of the road for these players. The NFL is full of stories where players cut from one team find new opportunities elsewhere and go on to have successful careers. Some of these Cowboys cut candidates could be signed to practice squads, claimed off waivers by other teams, or even brought back in the future if circumstances change. It's a dynamic and often unpredictable process, but one that keeps the league exciting and competitive. For fans, these surprises can be tough to swallow. Many have grown attached to players like Miles Sanders or Sam Williams, rooting for their success on and off the field. Seeing their names among potential cuts can feel like a betrayal or a loss. But it's also a reminder that the NFL is a business where team needs and roster strategy often outweigh individual stories. The best thing fans can do is keep supporting their team and trusting the front office and coaching staff to make the decisions they believe will lead to winning seasons. Looking ahead, the Cowboys' offseason moves, training camp performances, and preseason games will offer more clues about who ultimately makes the final roster. Players on this surprise cut list have a lot to prove if they want to stick around. They'll need to show they can stay healthy, perform consistently, contribute in multiple ways, and fit seamlessly into the team's plans. For some, this may be the motivation they need to elevate their game to new heights. In conclusion, while the potential cuts of Miles Sanders, Sam Williams, Jalen Tolbert, and 5 other players might shock many Cowboys fans, it's a reflection of the brutal competition and strategic roster management that defines the NFL. These decisions will have ripple effects on the team's depth, chemistry, and salary cap, shaping the Cowboys' fortunes for the upcoming season. Whether these players bounce back with the Cowboys, find new teams, or face uncertain futures, one thing is clear: the Cowboys are not afraid to make bold moves in pursuit of a championship. Stay tuned for more updates as we track training camp developments and final roster decisions. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss breaking news and in-depth analysis about your Dallas Cowboys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.